I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
Princess Anne had prepared herself for embarrassment, conflict, even betrayal, but not for the words that came from the court that morning. As the ruling was read, her expression hardened, her hands became completely still, and the room seemed to lose its air. Queen Camilla had been found responsible for misusing money assigned through the Royal Household Allowance. Yet the financial judgment was only the beginning. Buried inside it was a revelation capable of dividing the crown itself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne stared at the judgment that terrible morning. The Royal Household Allowance, the money approved for official staffing, travel, receptions, and royal operations, had been redirected toward private expenses, personal employees, and projects never cleared for public funding. The court had not found a minor accounting error. It had identified misuse. Charles removed his glasses and placed them beside the file. The king did not look at his sister, and that silence cut deeper than denial. William remained rigid across the table, as financial officers avoided one another's eyes. Even the keeper of the privy purse, the official supervising royal finances, could not soften what had been read. Anne gripped the table's edge. She had spent decades defending service, discipline, and the belief that royal privilege carried heavier duty. Now Camilla's office stood accused of treating protected funds as flexible, moving money until questions disappeared. The Princess Royal felt more than shock. She felt wounded. The judgment delivered its darkest blow. Investigators had traced not one payment, but a pattern. Costs were redirected, renamed, and approved through instructions linked to the Queen Consort's household. Camilla had not been connected to one careless decision. Her office appeared repeatedly in the documented account submitted to the court. William finally moved. He turned one page toward Anne and pointed to an expense that should have passed through a safeguard she oversaw. Someone had not forgotten to consult her. Someone had worked around her authority. Charles drew a breath, but no explanation came. The monarch's hesitation left the room trapped between marriage and duty. Was he preparing to defend the crown, or searching for a way to protect his wife? As the briefing ended, William quietly slid a sealed memorandum toward Anne. She opened it and found proof that Camilla had received a warning months earlier. Worse, a figure close to Charles had helped keep that warning from wider scrutiny. Anne could endure a court's judgment, but the memorandum in front of her raised a more painful question. Who inside her own family had known the truth and chosen silence? The judgment did not strike every royal in the same way. For Camilla, it threatened status, dignity, and the place she had spent years securing. For Charles, it forced an impossible collision between personal devotion and constitutional responsibility. But for Princess Anne, the wound was different. She did not see only misused money. She saw trust broken inside a family that had survived scandal by promising the public that duty would always come first. Anne had built her life around discipline. The Princess Royal, the title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, had never treated royal service as comfort or privilege. She believed public money carried a direct promise to the nation. Every journey, every employee, and every official expense had to serve a clear purpose. That was why the ruling felt personal. Someone had not simply broken a rule. Someone had weakened the standard she had spent decades defending. Camilla faced a different fear. The Queen Consort understood that repayment was only the beginning. The judgment could strip her household of financial independence, reduce her control over staff, and permanently attach her name to misuse. She had fought for years to earn acceptance. Now one court finding threatened to define everything that came before it. Charles found Anne alone after the briefing. The king closed the door and asked his sister to handle the crisis, without destroying anyone. She did not raise her voice. She simply told him the destruction began when the money was redirected, not when the court exposed it. He looked away, and that small movement confirmed how deeply marriage and duty had collided. Camilla dismissed 2 aides at Clarence House and remained with the ruling. When her private secretary asked whether she wanted to release a statement, she shut the folder. The Queen Consort said no statement could protect her from what the family now believed. Her words came through a documented account, later given to palace investigators, making the loneliness of that moment impossible to dismiss. William had already acted. The Prince of Wales had ordered a quiet review of spending linked to her office before the judgment was announced. He had not trusted the explanations, and his precautions showed it. Sophie then met Anne privately and revealed, during a recorded conversation kept for the internal review, that unusual payment requests had appeared months earlier. The trusted confidant had stayed silent because she believed Charles's office was investigating them. Anne now understood the real betrayal. Several people had known pieces of the truth, yet no one had brought the whole danger to her. The judgment had exposed the result, but Anne now needed to uncover the beginning, and one ceremonial weekend would lead her directly to the moment everything changed. Months before the court delivered its ruling, the royal household had gathered for what appeared to be a routine ceremonial weekend at Windsor. The schedule was polished, the guests carefully chosen, and every expense supposedly approved. But during a late-night financial review, one invoice appeared where it did not belong. It carried the cost of an official reception, yet the event it funded had never appeared on the royal calendar. That single discovery became the point of no return. Anne had already sensed that something was wrong. Spending linked to Camilla's office had been rising faster than the costs attached to similar royal duties. Each increase arrived with a familiar explanation: extra security, additional staff, private transport, hospitality, or sudden ceremonial demands. The Royal Household Allowance, the public funding used for approved royal operations, was supposed to follow strict limits. Yet the numbers kept climbing. Charles had asked his sister to strengthen financial accountability after earlier concerns about waste. The king trusted her discipline, and the Princess Royal took that responsibility seriously. She reviewed schedules, questioned unclear payments, and demanded proof that every major expense served an official purpose. That made what happened next feel less like an error and more like a direct attempt to move around her authority. Anne found the invoice during a late review of the Windsor program. It listed thousands in costs for something called the Windsor Heritage Reception. She stopped immediately. The princess had personally approved the complete ceremonial schedule, and no event by that name had taken place. Anne summoned the deputy treasurer into a private office the next morning. She placed the invoice before him and asked one simple question: what was this reception? The official turned pale. After several seconds, he admitted that Camilla had privately hosted a gathering for personal associates, while household funds covered catering, transport, and temporary staff. His statement was later preserved in a documented internal account. Charles heard the accusation before breakfast. Anne told her brother exactly what the treasurer had confirmed, but the monarch urged caution. He asked her not to turn an administrative confusion into a family accusation. She stared at him in disbelief. To her, the greater danger was not scandal. It was the possibility that he already wanted the issue softened. Camilla's office received a written warning soon afterward. Financial officers stated clearly that private gatherings could not be charged to the allowance. The Queen Consort had been formally notified, but the payments did not stop. A dismissed accounts officer later preserved the original invoice, the written warning, and records showing similar costs reclassified under different names. Those documents eventually reached the court and proved that Camilla's household had been warned before further money was redirected. Anne had believed the Windsor invoice represented carelessness. The preserved warning transformed it into something far darker, forcing her toward a confrontation no royal protocol could soften. There were no advisors, no secretaries, and no carefully prepared statements when Princess Anne entered Camilla's private sitting room. Only two women stood between the monarchy and a scandal neither could control. One believed the crown had been treated like a personal account. The other believed she was being judged by a family that had never fully accepted her. When the door closed, years of restrained resentment finally found a voice. Anne had demanded the meeting, after reading proof that spending continued even after the written warning. The Princess Royal refused Charles's suggestion that a palace lawyer should attend. A palace lawyer, the official responsible for protecting the monarch's legal position, might control the language. She wanted the truth without protection, delay, or careful excuses. Quote, Camilla arrived ready to defend herself. The Queen Consort carried a full breakdown of engagements, staffing costs, charitable hosting, and security arrangements. She argued that the disputed money had supported her royal duties, even when formal approval had not been completed. To her, the spending had strengthened relationships and protected the monarchy's wider interests. Anne placed the Windsor invoice between them. She asked why public household funds had paid for a private gathering of Camilla's personal contacts. The Queen replied that influence did not always begin at official events. Private relationships, she insisted, could become valuable support for the crown. Anne's voice hardened. She said service could not be redefined whenever convenience demanded it. Camilla answered with years of buried pain. She told the princess that she had never understood what it meant to enter the royal family under suspicion, to face constant judgment, and to prove every day that she deserved her place. The argument broke open. Camilla accused Anne of using the court ruling to weaken her position. The princess abruptly pushed her chair back. She said the court, not family rivalry, had identified the misuse. Loyalty, she added, could never mean pretending the judgment did not exist. Camilla fell silent before revealing the detail that changed everything. In a private recorded conversation later preserved for the household inquiry, the Queen said a senior official working under Charles had verbally assured her that the disputed expenses would be regularized later. She believed that meant approval would be added after the payments, and that the King's office had accepted the arrangement. Anne moved toward the door, then stopped. She turned and demanded the official's name. Camilla gave it. The answer connected the scandal to one of Charles's longest-serving and most trusted advisors. The confrontation ended without forgiveness. But Camilla's final disclosure shifted the danger away from one royal office and toward the machinery surrounding the king himself. Every royal household has figures who rarely appear before cameras, but hold enormous influence behind guarded doors. They control access, shape decisions, and translate a monarch's wishes into action. The advisor named by Camilla had served Charles for years, surviving family crises and changes of reign. Now his private assurances stood at the heart of a court judgment. Yet removing him would not solve the greater problem it could expose: how deeply the king's own office had intervened. Sir Malcolm Harwood had built his power through silence. As comptroller of the king's household, the senior official who controlled spending requests between royal offices and central funds, he could delay scrutiny, redirect paperwork, and move costs into less visible categories. Charles trusted him because he had protected family matters during difficult years and helped reorganize the household during the change of reign. William summoned Harwood to the king's library and placed the financial record before him. The prince asked one direct question: had he promised Camilla's staff that unauthorized expenses would be approved later? The advisor answered carefully, saying procedures were often flexible during periods of pressure. He spoke around the truth until William closed the file. "Your silence will be treated as confirmation," the future king said. Harwood finally admitted that he had told the Queen Consort's office the costs could be regularized later. He insisted he was protecting the monarchy from embarrassment, not enabling misuse. But his recorded statement to the internal inquiry made one thing clear: he had offered reassurance without formal authority. Charles entered before William could continue. The king demanded to know why his son was questioning a trusted servant without him. Anne followed moments later, carrying the authorization trail. She told her brother that his trust was exactly what had allowed Harwood to bypass the safeguards. The monarch's anger shifted. He was no longer defending one advisor. He was defending his own judgment. Harwood then made the claim that threatened everything. He said Charles knew Camilla's household needed greater financial flexibility and had never objected to unusual spending. The king rejected the suggestion immediately. He had approved support for official duties, not private events charged to public funds. Charles remained alone after the meeting and read the account transfers again. Several expenses had been moved under Harwood's initials. The monarch's hand trembled before he placed the page down and ordered the advisor's immediate suspension. But the palace had already lost control. A supplemental court order arrived before nightfall. It froze discretionary payments controlled by Camilla's office and appointed an external administrator to supervise future spending. The king could suspend one advisor, but he could not suspend the judgment, and by nightfall, Camilla would discover how quickly royal influence disappears when financial control is taken away. The consequences arrived without ceremony. No trumpet announced them, and no public procession marked the change. A financial officer simply entered Camilla's household office, collected the authorization seals, and informed her staff that they could no longer approve discretionary payments. In a monarchy built on symbols, that quiet removal carried devastating force. The queen consort still held her title, but, for the first time, she no longer controlled the machinery surrounding it. Camilla entered as the external administrator placed the final seal inside a locked case. The authorization seal, a formal mark allowing a royal office to approve spending, had once represented trust and independence. Now it became proof of what she had lost. She asked whether removing it was truly necessary. The officer answered quietly that the court order allowed no personal choice, no delay, and no exception. The restrictions spread quickly. Private consultants were suspended, hospitality plans were frozen, and several projects linked to the Queen's office stopped without warning. Staff members were told that every contract would be reviewed before another payment could be released. For Camilla, the damage was not only financial. Her household could no longer act without outside permission, and every future decision would carry the shadow of the judgment. Camilla telephoned Charles and asked him to stop what she called a public humiliation carried out behind closed doors. The king listened, but he did not offer rescue. He told her that interference could deepen the constitutional damage by making it appear that royal influence stood above the court. When the call ended, she remained seated with the receiver in her hand. His protection had reached its limit. Sophie later found Anne alone in a palace corridor. The trusted confidant expected relief, perhaps even satisfaction, but the Princess Royal showed neither. She admitted that she felt no victory. She felt anger, that warnings had been ignored until private failure became public punishment. Anne had wanted accountability, not destruction. William then supported a formal proposal requiring Camilla to repay the misused allowance from her private resources. The prince argued that moving the cost into another royal account would only disguise the consequence. Charles agreed. For the first time, the monarch publicly separated his wife's financial responsibility from the crown he was sworn to protect. Camilla understood what that decision meant. She had not only lost control, she had been left to carry the burden personally. That evening, she sent Anne a handwritten request for one final meeting. No Charles, no William, no lawyers, no palace officials. Camilla promised to explain why she had continued spending after the warning. The loss of authority had broken her defenses, but what she intended to confess would transform punishment into a choice between permanent division and painful understanding. The second meeting between Anne and Camilla looked nothing like the first. There were no files arranged as weapons, and no raised voices echoing through a guarded room. Camilla arrived alone, removed the court summary from her handbag, and placed it face down between them. Then she admitted something Anne had not expected to hear. She knew the spending rules had been crossed. What she had refused to accept was how completely fear had begun controlling her decisions. Camilla had asked for the meeting at Clarence's house after dark. No aides remained nearby, and no household official waited to carry their words back to Charles. The Queen Consort wanted no institutional buffer, meaning no advisor or palace office standing between her and the truth. Anne agreed because she had grown tired of explanations shaped by people protecting positions. Camilla spoke first. She described the pressure to maintain a strong public program, reward loyal supporters, host influential allies, and prove that her office deserved equal standing within the new reign. Every event had become a test. Every cut had felt like humiliation. She had feared that a smaller household would be seen as proof that the monarchy never truly accepted her. Anne listened without interruption. Camilla then admitted what the court had already shown. After receiving the Windsor warning, she allowed staff to place disputed costs under different categories instead of stopping them. The Queen told herself that later approval would make the method acceptable. She knew the process was wrong, but fear had made delay feel safer than surrender. Anne finally explained why the ruling had frozen her. The Princess Royal was not devastated by the amount alone. She had promised the late Queen that royal spending would remain tied to duty, restraint, and public trust. Camilla had accepted a system designed to avoid that very oversight. Camilla reached for her prepared notes, then pushed them aside. "I was wrong," she said. No defense followed. No accusation. No request for Charles to intervene. Anne did not forgive her immediately, but something changed. The admission carried more weight than every carefully written statement that had come before it. Camilla agreed to repay the full amount from her private funds. She would dismiss the staff members who helped disguise the expenses, surrender independent control of the allowance, and issue a personal acknowledgement through a recorded public statement. Anne gave her one condition. She would not defend the misuse, but she would stand beside Camilla if she told the truth, without blaming the court, the king, or the family. For the first time since the judgment, Anne and Camilla left the same room without hostility, but outside the palace walls. Britain was already preparing its own verdict. By sunrise, the royal scandal no longer belonged to private rooms, sealed files, or whispered palace briefings. It belonged to the public. Broadcasters interrupted regular programming, newspapers rushed out special editions, and crowds gathered outside royal gates, searching for signs of movement. Yet one image captured the national mood more powerfully than any legal summary. Princess Anne arriving at Buckingham Palace alone, expression firm, moments before Camilla's statement was due to be released. Charles knew the palace could no longer survive on careful silence. National broadcasters were calling the ruling the gravest royal household finance judgment of the reign, and the debate had moved beyond one woman's spending. The question was now whether personal influence had weakened public accountability. That mattered because the monarchy depended on trust, and trust could not survive if royal privilege appeared stronger than the rules. Charles approved a coordinated statement before the recorded address began. The king confirmed full repayment, outside supervision, Sir Malcolm Harwood's departure, and a complete restructuring of household expense controls. External supervision meant that independent financial officers, not Camilla's own staff, would approve future spending. The wording offered no excuse. The monarch understood that minimizing the findings would only deepen the damage. Camilla then spoke in her own recorded address. The Queen Consort accepted responsibility for allowing inappropriate expenses to pass through her office. Her voice tightened when she admitted that position, pressure, and fear had never justified ignoring financial safeguards. She did not blame Harwood. She did not blame Charles. Most importantly, she did not attack the court. Anne remained nearby, but stayed outside the recording. The Princess Royal had promised moral support, not protection from consequence. Camilla had to face the nation in her own words, because any attempt to hide behind family unity would make the apology feel hollow. Outside Windsor Castle, a newspaper vendor unfolded the morning edition of the Daily Chronicle. Its front page carried Anne's frozen expression beneath 4 words: "Duty demands an answer." A small crowd fell silent. Then one woman began applauding the promise of repayment, and others slowly joined her. Public anger did not disappear, but something shifted. Commentators noted that the monarchy had chosen visible consequence over private concealment. Camilla's direct admission prevented the scandal from sinking into months of denial. That evening, Charles summoned Anne, William, and Camilla to Buckingham Palace. The king would decide whether the queen consort retained a formal household role. The public had heard the confession and seen the consequences. But only one question remained inside the palace. After the money was repaid, could the broken trust ever be restored? The final meeting did not end with triumph. There was no winner seated around the table at Buckingham Palace. Only 4 people confronting the cost of decisions made in fear, loyalty, and silence. Charles had to judge his wife without abandoning her. William had to protect the future of the monarchy without deepening a family wound. Camilla had to accept a diminished role. And Anne had to decide whether accountability could exist beside mercy. Camilla agreed to repay every expense identified by the court from her private funds. The Royal Household Allowance, the money approved for official staffing, travel, and royal operations, would never again be controlled independently by her office. Every future payment would pass through one audited system, where outside officers could examine the purpose, approval, and final destination of the money. Supported the reforms without hesitation. The prince joined Anne on a new Household Oversight Council, a small group given authority to review unusual or exceptional expenses before they could be approved. Sir Malcolm Harwood formally left royal service, and the hidden reclassification process he had controlled was abolished. No advisor would again be able to move private costs between accounts and bury them beneath official language. Charles turned toward Camilla. The king told her that he would continue to support her as her husband, but he could not use the crown to erase the consequences of her choices. The monarchy belonged to something larger than their marriage. She received his decision without protest. For once, the queen consort did not ask him to protect her. Anne spoke next. The Princess Royal told Camilla that trust would not return because of one apology, one repayment, or one painful public statement. It would have to be rebuilt through years of disciplined conduct. Camilla answered that she understood. She would not ask for quick forgiveness or pretend that the damage had disappeared. Anne lifted the court ruling from the table, closed its cover, and placed it beside the new oversight charter. The charter was the written plan establishing stricter financial control across the royal household. Then she sat down instead of leaving. That choice carried the final message. Camilla would retain her title and selected public duties, but her household would remain under permanent financial supervision. She accepted the restriction not as temporary humiliation, but as the lasting consequence of what she had done. The ruling did not destroy the monarchy. It forced the crown to prove that royal status could never place anyone above responsibility. Anne's frozen reaction became the symbol of that truth. Duty is painful, because it must apply even to those closest to us. There was no hidden escape from the verdict. Camilla misused the allowance, accepted the consequences, and lost financial control. Anne ensured that the crown chose accountability over protection, and survived because it did. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.